Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, June 25th edition of the MMAOB Daily podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin. Going to be taking you through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. First and foremost, guys, follow me on Twitter at Adam Martin. This podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com and also on our YouTube channel. Please like, share, subscribe. Spread the word, guys. I'd appreciate that. We're also available at SoundCloud. I'm still working on the iTunes, but there's lots of ways to watch the podcast, so definitely check it out. I appreciate it. Also, check me out at sherdog.com, bjpenn.com, MMAnews.com, and MMArings.net. I'm everywhere these days. All right, guys, so we got some good news here to talk about today. Some breaking news very late last night. I'm going to get right into it. Very surprising fight announcement, but, it kind of makes sense when you think about it. I'll talk about it in a second here. Colby Covington is returning, but he's not fighting Kamaru Usman for the UFC welterweight title. Instead, he's going to fight Robbie Lawler at UFC Newark. That's in August 3rd, I believe, in New Jersey. So very surprising fight announcement. But there was a tweet later that night from Brett Okamoto, who broke the original fight, saying that Kamaru Usman will not be ready to return into November. So Colby Covington hasn't fought since last June. He has to fight, and he couldn't wait till November, obviously. He's already risked it. I think he's kind of far back in line at this point. He's taken so much time off that Ben Askren's arguably passed him. Ben Askren was at the press conference yesterday for UFC 239. He's doing really good numbers. If you look at the social media metrics, Ben Askren's killing it. So the UFC, they don't really like Colby Covington for what we know. I mean, remember the thing with Dana White a few months ago? We thought that might get him a title shot. Looks like it didn't. So, for Colby Covington, this is disappointing news. No doubt about it. He hasn't fought since last June against Rafael dos Anjos. He took a year off. He lost his interim title when he couldn't fight at UFC 228 last year in Dallas when he was supposed to fight Tyron Woodley, couldn't fight. Darren Till took the fight. UFC stripped him of the interim belt due to an injury. It was pretty unfair, but that's how the sport is. There's no guarantees. Even if you're an interim champ, look what happened to Tony Ferguson. He's won 12 straight fights, one of the longest winning streaks in UFC history, hasn't got a title shot yet. So Colby Covington took a risk by waiting so long to fight again, and now he's not getting a title shot. So for him, it's obviously got to be disappointing. He's coming back. He's fighting Robbie Lawler, a former training partner of his, longtime training partner down in the American Top Team. So it's an interesting fight. I mean, Colby Covington, obviously a great wrestler, good cardio, good gas tank. Not much in the striking realm, but really good wrestler. Taking on a guy in Robbie Lawler who's known for his striking prowess, good takedown defense, but coming off a submission loss to Ben Askren. Controversial or not, he did lose that fight. So it's an interesting matchup from the UFC's point of view. Remember, Robbie Lawler was supposed to fight Tyron Woodley this weekend at UFC Minneapolis. Tyron Woodley got hurt. Robbie Lawler was removed from the card, and now we know why, because he's fighting Colby Covington. So I like this matchup, though. I mean, as far as a fight goes, it's a good fight, no doubt about it. I mean, this is a fun matchup. It's an interesting matchup. I think Colby Covington will be the favorite in this fight just based on his name, based on the wrestling skill. But Robbie Lawler matches up decently well. If he can stop the takedowns, if he can keep this fight on the feet, look what happened in the first minute of the Ben Askren fight. He hurt him bad. So we'll see what happens. We've never really seen Colby in trouble except for the Warley Alves fight when he was submitted, but he was injured going into that fight. Otherwise, never really been in trouble. This is an interesting matchup. Is it a main event worthy fight? I guess so for like a UFC on Fox /Fight Night event. It's not that bad. Pay-per-view, no, it wouldn't have been. But, for Colby, this has just got to be disappointing. I mean, he waited so long. He wanted that title shot, but, eventually he has to fight. He's got to make money somehow, right? He's a prize fighter. So he hasn't fought since last, like I said, June. It'll be 14 months by the time he fights Lawler. Lots of cage rust probably heading into this fight. But, the guy keeps himself in great shape. He'll probably be, like I said, he'll probably be the favorite in this fight. And, he probably does win. But I wouldn't completely discount Robbie Lawler in this matchup. I think he's got a decent chance to win. Just stylistically, it's a decent fight for him. So we'll see what happens. But, again, with Kamaru Usman not fighting until November, and Ben Askren fighting Jorge Masvidal 2 weeks from now in Las Vegas, this opens up the possibility of the winner of that fight passing Colby Covington for a title shot. And Dana White's already talked about it. He did a long interview yesterday with Brett Okamoto, I think 20 minutes. Go check that out if you guys want. It was a good interview with Dana, lots of tidbits in there. One of the things was he's just like, there's no guarantees here. And Colby waited a long time, and then a few hours later we saw the fight announcement. So, it is what it is. This is MMA. Nothing surprises me anymore. This is the UFC. Nothing surprises me. You get an interim title shot. Interim title. You win it. There's no guarantee you're going to fight for the real belt. That belt turned into be a complete joke. It was never defended. It was stripped almost immediately from Colby. it makes it's kind of an insult to the fans, if anything. You're paying for an interim title fight to watch it, and then the title means literally nothing a few months later. That's not really right. But the UFC's did this a lot. They're not going to do one for that Cyborg Felicia Spencer fight. So maybe they're learning from what the fans are saying. Like, hey, we don't want to see these interim title fights. It's not right. You're stripping these guys a few months later, girls in that case. Anyways, like I said, it was a surprising news, guys. But considering the world of MMA and considering the way the UFC handles their business, it's not that shocking when you really think about it. All right, what else are we going to talk about here? Well, I have quite a bit to talk about. There's Contender Series tonight, which I'll talk about in a second. There was also a couple fight announcements, which I'll talk about in 1 second. But I want to talk about Dana White. He did have, like I said, that long interview. And one of the things that I keyed in on was he wants to see Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier 3, which I think a lot of us do, but at heavyweight this time, which I think, again, a lot of us do. So I actually agree with Dana on this one. If that third fight happens, I want to see it at heavyweight as well. We've seen the fight twice at 205. Jon Jones won a decision the first time, UFC 182, and then the second time in Anaheim, Jon Jones won by head kick, and then it was overturned to a no contest. So both fighters have said they want to fight at 205. I interviewed Daniel Cormier in Brazil last month at UFC 237. At the PokerStars event, he said, I want to fight him at 205. Dana White wants it heavyweight. We'll see what happens. Money talks. We all know that. So first off, Jon Jones has to get by Thiago Santos. DC has to get by Stipe. But if both those guys win those fights as expected, that trilogy fight seems very likely. I mean, Dana did say that Daniel Cormier only has 2 fights left, and he thinks one of them will be against Jon Jones. We know Brock Lesnar's not coming back anytime soon. So who else is there for DC to fight? The Jones fight makes sense. Again, heavyweight throws a wrench into it because it makes it a little bit more interesting, I think. I think DC is a better fighter heavyweight, in my opinion. So it's an interesting fight. Jon Jones, we've all wanted to see him in heavyweight forever. Just say he moved up to heavyweight, beats DC, and then becomes the heavyweight champ. We wanted to see this for the longest time. So I'm very curious to see this matchup. Also, there's I wouldn't say a rumor, but someone on Twitter, I can't remember who it was exactly, said that Dana White was on a radio station, ESPN LA, I believe, that he wants to he's talking to the New Jersey Athletic Commission about overturning the Jon Jones Matt Hamill controversial DQ loss from like 10 years ago. We'll see what happens there. But I mean, first off, it opens up a Pandora's box, no doubt about it, when you're going back 10 years later and overturning fights that are DQs into, I guess, a no contest. But to me, it makes sense. I mean, we've all seen that fight. That was complete garbage from referee Steve Mazzucato, who doesn't even work in the sport anymore. He was one of the worst refs to ever be in MMA. He ruined Jon Jones' perfect record. That was ridiculous. That fight should have been stopped well before the illegal elbow landed. It was arguably not even an illegal elbow. So for me, a lot of people are like, "Oh, this is ridiculous." Not really. And to me, this should have been happened like 10 years ago. We'll see what happens. Can Dana White pull some strings and get this overturned? I'm okay with it if it happens. If not, it is what it is. I mean, it's kind of hard to set a precedent, again, going back 10 years. But to me, Dana White, he's doing his best for Jon Jones to keep him as an undefeated fighter, to promote him as that. It helps Dana out. It helps Jon Jones and his legacy out. It is what it is. We'll see what happens. If not, he heaps that loss on his record. We all know that was ridiculous either way. So Jon Jones, he wins either way, in my opinion here. It's not a big deal either way, but if he can get that loss overturned to a no contest because of a bad referee decision to stop that fight at that point due to a legal elbow, and we all know that fight should have been stopped due to TKO. We'll see what happens. All right, what else? I'm going to talk about Contender Series in a second here, but I want to talk about, first of all, Jose Aldo signed a new 8-fight deal with the UFC. So apparently he signed it before the Volkanovski fight. We didn't know about this until yesterday when Brett Okamoto asked Dana White. Dana said that he signed a long-term deal. He's not going to be doing boxing. Like, he kept saying, I want to box, I want to play soccer. Not happening. He's fighting in the UFC for the foreseeable future. And this is good for the UFC. This is good for Jose Aldo. This is good for the fans. Jose Aldo is still one of the best in the world. The fight with Volkanovski was a poor performance. I was at that fight. He just didn't have it that night. It is what it is. He's on the downside of his career. We'll know that. But you can't forget what he did to Renato Moicano. You can't forget what he did to Jeremy Stephens. The guy still has knockout power. He's still one of the best in the world. I'm not ready to completely write off Jose Aldo just because of one bad loss to Volkanovski. He was a stud himself. And speaking of Volkanovski, he's out there now saying, I want to fight Conor McGregor in a money fight. So we'll see what happens there. I doubt it happens because Conor's in a higher weight class now. Volkanovski's not a big name. Probably never happens. But just say Volkanovski goes out there, starches Frankie or Max, whoever he fights at the title later this year. At that point, I mean, why not call out Conor? I mean, everyone calls Conor out. Why not him? I guess that's probably there's a lot of thinking here, but unlikely to get that fight. All right, what else? You know what? Before I get into contender series, here's something interesting. Luke Thomas announced the end of the MMA Hour, and the MMA Beat is also done. So, you know, I want to mention this because I think a lot of the people watching right now probably do watch the show or they've watched it in the past. I mean, I used to watch the MMA Hour religiously, of course, like everyone, like every MMA fan, every MMA journalist. We all watched Ariel's show. When Ariel left, you know, I've checked out Luke's show a couple of times. You know, it was okay. I mean, I have no problem with Luke personally. I don't even really know him. But I did like Ariel's show quite a bit. You always got good guests on and everything like that. You know, it just shows that the way the business is heading, if anything. You know, it's a tough industry. I mean, guys, I've been in this industry grinding for 8 years. Luke's been in it, I think, even like a little bit longer than me. So it's a tough business. You know, I wish him the best. I don't really know Luke Thomas. It is kind of the timing's kind of strange that Chael Sonnen had that huge rant, and then the next day Luke Thomas announced the end of the show. I don't know if that's connected or not, but maybe Chael knew something about that. I'm not too sure. It's kind of made for some good theater on Twitter, but you know, best of luck to Luke and in the future and stuff like that. But you know, for MMA fighting, I mean, this is you know, it's kind of crazy, right? They've lost so many guys, and we've lost a lot of content in the last couple of years. I'll be interested to see what happens with their website, but you know, I've heard. You know, some people suggested why not merge with Bloody Elbow, which is, you know, there's great writers there. Kareem Zidane, good friend of mine. Tim Bissell, another great writer. Lots of guys, Mookie, Steffi. Like, there's a lot of good writers there. So, you know, if they're losing all their talent, that makes a lot of sense, but we'll see what happens. I just had to mention this because literally everyone in the MMA sphere is talking about the end of the MMA Hour, which, you know, for a lot of us has been a staple in the lives for the last 10 years or so of MMA fandom. But when Ariel left to go to ESPN, I think a lot of viewership went down for that particular show. All right, a couple fight announcements, and then I'm going to get into the Contender Series. A lightweight fight at Newark, New Jersey. That's the same card as Colby Covington and Robbie Lawler. Interesting matchup here. Jim Miller's taking on Clay Guida. So two of the longest tenured veterans in MMA going at each other. I was surprised when they hadn't fought. I was actually shocked. I was like, man, they've definitely fought before, but somehow they haven't. So interesting fight. Jim Miller coming off a great performance against Jason Gonzalez, submitted him. Before that, lost to Oliveira, but before that had beat Alex White by submission. So he's actually looked decent lately. Taking on Clay Guida here. Clay Guida coming off a pretty dominant win over BJ Penn in Brazil. Again, I was there for that fight. Before that, had lost to Oliveira, so they have a common opponent. And then before that, had beaten Joe Loza and Eric Koch. So interesting fight between two long tenured veterans of the sport. Again, very surprising they haven't fought. I for sure thought this was a rematch, but no, they have not fought before. Have to believe that Guida will be the favorite, though. I personally would make him the favorite, just that wrestling and that pace. But Jim Miller definitely has the submission ability to make it interesting. We've seen Clay Guida get submitted many times in his career. In fact, he has 9 losses by submission. So interesting matchup. And, you know, they'll probably, even though they're older guys right now, that probably will be a front runner for fight of the night, I assume, in that card, because two guys that have won a lot of bonus money in their careers. And one last fight announcement before I get into the Contender Series. Pannie Kianzad is actually returning to the UFC. It was kind of strange how she was cut after losing to Macy Chiasson in the finals of The Ultimate Fighter, but she's coming back, and she's going to take on Julia Avila at UFC 239, filling in for Julia Gatto. So Pannie Kianzad, just pulling out her resume. Again, she made it to the finals of The Ultimate Fighter, and I was surprised she was cut. Since then, she went to a Superior Challenge in Sweden, and she beat Yanni Raza Fiersian by decision, and is going to make her return to the UFC. And then she's taking on Julia Avila. Julia Avila, interesting I wouldn't say a prospect. She's 31, but she has some good wins on her resume. So she's actually 31, like I said, 5-1 record, but she has a win over Nico Montano and a win over Mary Renault. So she has some good wins. She's been fighting as a pro since 2012, but took a lot of time off in between fights. Interesting matchups. Coming off a knockout win in Invicta. Again, Kianzad, lots of experience. It was a stud in Invicta for sure, but interesting fight here. I don't know who's going to be favored. I would assume maybe Kianzad just because her name, but I think Avila's, you know, definitely a really good fighter, and I'm interested to see what she can bring to the table here. All right. Last but not least, guys, Dana White's Contender Series 18. That's tonight. I want to check if there's odds on. I don't know if there is yet. I've been looking on Best Fight Odds. Nope, not out yet. So keep refreshing, guys. It'll come out hopefully today. I'm just going to pull out, where is it? I'm going to pull out Sherdog here and see. Let's see. Dana White's Contender Series. All right. So they don't make it easy to find here, but I'm going to find it. Dana White's Contender Series. Yeah, Season 3, Episode 2. That's what Sherdog calls it. Other websites are calling it Dana White's Contender Series 18. I think that's what Best Fight Odds will call it, so that's what we'll call it. All right, so let's go to this fight here. We have let me just check it out here, guys. The main event is there was a switch up because there was a weight miss, but the main event right now is Alton Cunningham against Tony Johnson. Again, I'm using Sherdog's records here, so they might differ from Tapology's, but I just wanted to mention that. Alton Cunningham, he's 4-1 in MMA, coming off a win over Eric Murray. Four wins by knockout in his career. One loss to Bavon Lewis last year in the Contender Series by knockout. Definitely an interesting prospect. And taking on Tony Johnson here. I don't know if that's the same Tony Johnson. One sec, guys. Let me see if there could be it looks like there's two different Tony Johnsons. All right. Very strange. Is that the guy? Yeah, that's the wrong one. Okay, no worries. So, okay, so it's Tony Johnson. It's a different prospect. This guy, I believe, is 6-2. It's got to be this guy, right? Okay, this is what Sherdog has on the card. But again, I'm a little confused here because there's a couple Tony Johnsons. I'm going to check Tapology. This is a little confusing right now. Let's check here. Tony Cunningham. Alton Cunningham. All right. Yeah. So again, the records differ. Tapology has Cunningham at 7-1. Then you got Tony Johnson here, 7-2. Yeah. So they say he's on a 3-fight win streak. Sherdog doesn't have that. They have a different record for Tony Johnson. But either way, interesting fight. Yeah, Sherdog's got him at 6-2. So I don't know who you want to believe there. But either way, interesting fight between these two prospects. Johnson's 36, so he's an older guy. Cunningham's got a little bit more experience, but Johnson's been around for a long time. This guy's kind of an interesting prospect in a way. He fought at Strikeforce in 2008, so he's been around a long time. He fought Clifford Starks in 2011, former UFC fighter. He's actually been fighting since 2007. So good for this dude, man. This guy persevered and got a shot in the Contender Series after 12 years of as a pro, and no one even really knows who he is. And according to Sherdog, his last fight was in Bellator, although, again, Tapology has listed as a different fight listed as his last fight. But I wish I had odds to talk about this one. I am interested in seeing this fight, but I have to assume Alton Cunningham is going to be the favorite just based on the fact he was on Contender Series and all the knockout wins. Definitely an interesting fight, though. Next up, we have Zach Lane against Justin Gonzalez. This is a featherweight bout. Zach Lane, and I'm using Tapology right now just because they seem to have a little bit more organized. Zach Lane, 12-7 record. He's won, according to Tapology, 8 fights in a row. Another interesting prospect. Who's he fought that's notable? Joey Gomez. He was on the Contender Series last year. A couple other guys from Hawaii. Alaska FC's fought as well. Justin Gonzalez, 9-0. Who's he fought that's notable? No one really too notable, to be honest with you. Interesting fight. Again, I wish I had odds to talk about it, but I'd have to assume just based on this undefeated record, this Gonzalez will be the favorite in this matchup. Next up, we have middle bout between Michael Lombardo and Kyle Daukaus. Michael Lombardo, 8-1. He's won 5 straight fights. Again, not really any notable opponents. And then taking on Daukaus, 6-0. He's won 6 straight fights, like I said, and he beat Jonathan Webb in his last fight. That's a former UFC fighter. That was a couple months ago. So that's a good win. Again, undefeated guy. You'd have to assume he'll be the favorite here, but we don't have odds, so don't quote me on that one. Next up, bantamweight bout, Miles John and Richie Santiago. Miles John's 8-0. Definitely an interesting prospect here. A lot of fights in LFA, so he's definitely come from the right spot. And then taking on Richie Santiago here, 7-1 record. Won his last fight, but had been submitted to the fight before that. Again, both guys haven't really found anyone notable, but all these undefeated guys, you have to assume they'll be the favorites in these fights. But we'll see what happens when the odds come out. I'm not too sure what the odds makers are saying there. And then last but not least, this is actually a catchweight bout. Victor Reyna missed weight. He's taking on Miguel Beza. Victor Reyna took this fight on short notice, filling in for another opponent. Sherdog actually has the other opponent here. What's his name? The guy who got injured was what's his name here? Ramiz Bramajaj. So Sherdog needs to update that because the fight's tonight and they have to update that. But Miguel Beza, 6-0 record. Again, he's coming off, like I said, a bunch of wins here. Hasn't found anyone notable, and then taking on Victor Reyna, 10-3 record, 2 straight wins. Kambachi veteran. He fought Kevin Holland. That's probably his most notable name. Lost by submission to Kevin Holland. Other than that, hasn't really fought any. Well, I fought Mark Stevens. I guess I believe he was an Ultimate Fighter a couple years ago, long time. Actually, yes, he was. Mark Stevens, former Ultimate Fighter. Yeah, so I remember him. Yeah, I don't know. Interesting fight again. You know, the undefeated guy against a guy with a couple losses. Assuming the undefeated guy will be the favorite, but we'll see what happens. I wish I had the odds to talk about these fights, guys, but I don't have them. But I do have odds to talk about UFC in Minneapolis. So that card's this weekend. But you guys have to wait till tomorrow when Cole Shelton joins the podcast, and we'll break down that entire card. I'm looking forward to breaking down that card, actually. It's a good one. I think that's all I want. Oh, yeah, here's one other thing. Diego Sanchez left Jackson Winklejohn. That's something else I wanted to mention quickly. I was surprised by this as well. I mean, he's been there forever, and he's been in the UFC forever too. So, you know, with the success he's had lately, I'm a little surprised by this one, but he says there's some issues there as far as like loyalty and respect go. He's not the first person who said that. So I don't know what's going on at Jackson Wink, but hey, you know, Diego Sanchez still fighting at a high level in 2019. Amazing stuff. You know, 15 years in the UFC. The guy's been around forever. He's seen everything, done everything, and he wants to reinvent himself at an older age. So good for him, man. And I wish the best for Diego Sanchez. And again, not sure what's going on at Jackson Wink, but I want to mention that. And I think that's it, guys. That's all I want to talk about today. Quite a bit that I talked about, but I want to get it all out there. Again, follow me on Twitter at MMAOB. Follow this podcast, MMAOddsbreaker.com. Go to youtube.com/MMAOddsbreaker. Please like, share, subscribe, spread the word. I appreciate that, guys. MMAOddsbreaker.com should have my opening odds reactions to the UFC Minneapolis card. I think today or tomorrow it'll be posted. But again, we're doing the full podcast tomorrow, so definitely check that out tomorrow morning. MMAnews.com, check that out as well. MMARains.net, check me out there. Shootout.com, beating the books, and the same prop bets are out. And BJPen.com, I have a couple of news stories out to check out as well. If you want to read about anything I talked about today in further depth, definitely go to BJPen.com. That's your best source for the news. All right, guys, I appreciate you guys listening once again. And I'll be back tomorrow morning to talk about the latest in MMA and then do another podcast with Cole breaking down UFC on ESPN3. Have an awesome day, guys. And I'll see you tomorrow morning.